My name is Josephine Quinn, 38 years old. The day my daughter came home from that perfect family vacation, the light in her eyes looked wrong. It was dimmer, careful, like she was afraid even the sun might overhear her. When my parents' car pulled into their driveway, I was already outside waiting. They climbed out, voices overlapping, Mom, Dad, my sister Belle, all laughter and stories that smelled like sunscreen and performance. Hazel stepped out last, holding her stuffed fox by the tail. Her sandals were mismatched, one of them new. I crouched to meet her. Hey, sweetheart, I said. Did you have fun? She nodded too fast, the way a child does when yes feels safer than the truth. Belle leaned across the car roof, sunglasses flashing like polished mirrors. She was an angel once she settled down, she said. Peaceful, Mom added. Her favorite word. Peaceful, the family's code for silence. I smiled just enough to pass, took Hazel's hand, and thanked them. She pressed herself against me, her fingers tightening around my shirt like a small alarm. On the drive home, she didn't hum, didn't ask for music, didn't even look out the window long, just stared, heavy and far away. Every mile made the silence thicker. At dinner, she only moved her peas around. Spencer tried to keep his tone light. Maybe she's just tired, he said. Maybe, I answered, but the word felt hollow. Afterward, Hazel went straight to her room. No story, no good night song. I followed her anyway. The nightlight cast gold across her walls. Her fox sat on the pillow, a witness to whatever she wasn't saying. I tucked her in. Did you have fun with Grandma and Aunt Belle? She nodded again. Then, barely whispering, I wasn't too loud today, was I? The question sliced through the quiet. You? Loud? I said gently. No, honey. Why? She blinked slowly. Then I can sleep inside, right? My heart stuttered. Of course you can. Why would you think you couldn't? She took a breath that trembled. Aunt Belle said, when I'm loud, I have to wait outside until I'm quiet. Grandma said good girls don't cry. So I waited. A long time. The room shrank. Outside where? She pointed toward the door. In the hallway. It was dark, but I was quiet, so they let me back in. Everything inside me turned cold. I kept my voice steady. What else did they say? Her eyes filled. That the room was just for family. That sentence broke something I didn't know could still break. I wanted to scream, to drive to that hotel and make them look me in the eye. But Hazel was watching, measuring how scared she should be. I smiled the brittle, emergency mom smile and whispered, You're my family, always. No one can change that. She nodded, closed her eyes, and clutched her fox tight. I sat beside her bed until her breathing evened out. Then I turned off the light and stared into the darkness until morning. The kitchen felt too bright at dawn. Spencer handed me coffee, reading my face like it was a crime scene. You're calling them, he said. I'm calling them. Belle answered on the second ring, voice all sunshine. Josephine, everything okay? Hazel told me you made her stand in the hallway. A pause, then a laugh. Oh, that? She was fine. We just needed some peace and quiet. So you actually sent her out there. She was misbehaving, Belle said, tone tilting defensive. Everyone was exhausted. It was just a few minutes. She said 3 hours. That's ridiculous. She's exaggerating. And you told her the room was just for family. Another sharp laugh. It was a joke. You always take things so seriously. I'm taking this seriously because you humiliated my daughter. From somewhere behind her, Mom's voice drifted in. She's fine. Don't start a fight over nothing. Nothing? I repeated, my voice small and dangerous. Belle sighed. You weren't there. You don't know how loud she gets. I said nothing. You always blow things up, she continued. You've always been the sensitive one. I'm sensitive, I said quietly, because you locked my daughter outside a hotel room. The line went still. Then Belle said, Cold now. You need to calm down. I ended the call before I could scream. Spencer watched me. Well? They did it, I said. Hazel padded into this kitchen, hair sticking up, sleepy smile small and uncertain. I pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. She didn't need to hear what I'd just heard. Something inside me settled, not calm, but final. They thought I'd let it go. They were wrong. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that hallway. I heard Hazel's tiny voice. The room was just for family. By morning, I stopped pretending it was just about her. This was a pattern, a legacy. When I was 9, I'd been sent out on the porch for crying during dinner. Dad said it was to learn composure. The door had clicked behind me, and I'd watched them eat through the glass, my reflection merging with theirs. I swore I'd never let anyone do that to my child. Now here we were. I opened my laptop at the kitchen table. The spreadsheet of transfers glowed across the screen. Mortgage support for my parents, temporary loans for Belle, monthly art grants that were just allowances in disguise. The family's lifeline, paid for by me. I hovered over the first one. Mortgage transfer, $3,200. Spencer came in quietly. You sure? She left our daughter in a hallway, I said. I'm done buying peace. My finger trembled once, then I clicked cancel transfer. A small sound, final, surgical. Then I heard a faint chime from my phone, an unheard voicemail, dated 3 nights earlier. I pressed play. Hi, this is Greg from the Seaside Hotel, a man's voice said. Just calling to confirm everything's all right with your little girl. She was found sleeping near the ice machine around midnight. Staff brought her a blanket. Thought you should know. My lungs forgot how to work. Proof. Cold, absolute proof. I replayed it twice, letting every word burn itself in. Then I saved it, forwarded it to myself, and whispered to the empty kitchen, no more doors, ever again. Outside, the sky was just turning pale, a new day pretending it didn't know what we'd lost. I didn't wait for courage to catch up. After breakfast, I called the Seaside Hotel and asked for the night manager named in the voicemail. Greg picked up with the gravelly politeness of someone who'd worked too many midnights in a row. When I explained who I was, his voice softened. Yeah, I remember your kid. Small, red backpack with a fox keychain. I closed my eyes. That's her. He hesitated. Ma'am, I'm not trying to start trouble, but we were concerned. Guests mentioned a child outside a door. We can pull the keycard activity, if that helps. It would more than help. I told him I'd drive over. It was a 2-hour trip each way. Spencer reached for the keys. I'll go with you. We didn't talk about whether I was overreacting. We didn't talk about anything. On the highway, the landscape skimmed past in long gray bands. I watched the lines roll under the tires and thought about all the lines I'd let my family step over because I didn't want to start a fire. The Seaside Hotel looked nicer in morning light. White balconies, clipped palms, a pool pretending everything was fine. Greg met us behind the front desk, a square-shouldered man with the careful hands of someone who remembered every face he'd ever had to wake. He led us to a small office with a humming printer and a view of the laundry bays. We don't release guest information lightly, he said, but this involves a minor's safety. He pulled up the door log. Room 608, he read. Here we go. A list of timestamps marched across the screen. Door opened at 8:42 p.m. Closed. Opened at 8:45. Closed. Then 9:10, 9:37, 10:02, 11:49. No re-entry at 11:49. Next, 12:16 a.m. Opened. Closed. That gap, he said, tapping the screen, between 9:37 and 12:16. That's when a guest reported a child in the corridor. We sent security up at 11:58, blanket at 12:05. I did a floor walk at 12:10. She wasn't crying when I saw her, just awake, trying very hard to be small. My throat burned. Can we get a printout? He nodded, already pressing the button. I'll also write an incident note for your records. He slid 2 papers across the desk like a doctor delivering a diagnosis. On the way back, Spencer drove one-handed for a while, his other hand open on the console between us. I laid my fingers there. He didn't squeeze. He just let me know that the hand was there if I needed it. You okay? He asked. Define okay. He half smiled without humor. Right. I watched the ocean vanish in the rear view. You know what's wild? I said. If we didn't have this paper, they'd still call it a joke. They still might, he said, eyes on the road, but they won't get to make it true. At home, I scanned the documents and saved them to a folder named with the angriest kind of precision, facts. Then I reopened the spreadsheet. I didn't hover now. I clicked with purpose. Cancel monthly bridge for Belle, $1,200. Cancel festival travel, hold, $850. Cancel temporary daycare top-up, $600. Cancel utilities emergency for mom and dad, $400. Cancel the second mortgage transfer I'd let roll like a background hum, $3,200. Each confirmation bloomed on the screen with clinical finality. By the 5th click, my heart was a metronome thudding in my neck. By the 8th, I could breathe again. The phone rang before dinner. I didn't answer. It rang again. Spencer went to toss a salad. The knife beat a steady rhythm against the board. Hazel colored at the table, humming under her breath, her hum back where it belonged. The 3rd call came as the oven beeped. "Probably your parents," Spencer said. I nodded. "It's a new rule," I said. "We don't answer during dinner." We ate. The phone blinked in the other room like a lighthouse for drowning people who had never learned to swim. They came the next afternoon, of course. You could set a clock by their sense of entitlement. The doorbell sounded 3 neat chimes, polite as a press conference. When I opened the door, my parents stood framed by the porch, Belle between them like a prize they still believed they could present. Mom's smile was stretched and tight. Dad's jaw worked like he was chewing a sentence. Belle's sunglasses were on her head like a crown. "Josephine," Mom said, "we just want to clear the air." "There's nothing to clear." They stepped inside anyway, trailing perfume and judgment. The hallway swallowed their shadows. Belle didn't waste time. "You've gone insane," she said, voice sharp enough to cut. "All this over one misunderstanding." I held up the printed logs. 3 hours and change. Security, a blanket, an incident report. Which part is a misunderstanding? She skimmed the page and smirked in a way I'd seen her use in edit rooms, to belittle an inconvenient fact until it shrank. "You really are dramatic." I learned from the best. Dad lifted his palms, peacemaker pose polished over decades. "Sweetheart, we said we were sorry." "You said I was overreacting," I said. "Then you asked for money." His hands dropped. The calm mass blinked. "We're in a tight spot," he said carefully. "The HELOC reset. Your mother's dental. The house—" "Sell it," I said. Mom flinched like I'd cursed. "After everything we've done for you?" The line I'd been fed since childhood, plated in sacrifice, designed to be swallowed without question. I didn't take a bite. Hazel's feet creaked on the stairs. She froze halfway down. Fox clutched against her chest, eyes too wide for a 6-year-old. "Back to your room, honey," I said softly. She turned and bolted. Belle watched her go, with a look I couldn't read. Annoyance, maybe, that her audience had shrunk. "You think money makes you better than us," she said. "No," I answered. "It makes you notice me now. That's different." Silence pooled like cold water. For once, they couldn't find a script. "You've become cruel," Mom said finally. "No," I said, feeling the truth settle like a key in a lock. "I've become done." They left in a series of small retreats, the bag adjusted on a shoulder, the step backward that pretends to be polite, the door closing more loudly than necessary. The house didn't feel cleaner afterward, just heavier, like the air knew it had been rented to a fight. Spencer poured 2 glasses of wine and set one near my hand. He didn't offer advice. He didn't say "I told you so." He stood there in the twilight kitchen, the cabinets glowing a soft amber that made the world look briefly kinder, and waited for me to come back to myself. When my phone finally buzzed, it didn't show their names. It was an unknown number with a local area code. The preview flashed 3 words: "You owe us." I opened it. A single line. The mortgage payment didn't go through. Some glitch? We need it by Friday. For a second, I almost replied with a bank error joke, the way I would have months ago to smooth the sting. Then I saw the forwarded voicemail icon in my inbox and the printouts beside my glass, and I put the phone face down. That night, I packaged the documents from my lawyer, the hotel logs, the incident note, a bullet list of every transfer I'd canceled and why. I wrote it calmly, like I was logging lab results. At the bottom, I added one sentence. "We're moving from requests to boundaries." I hit send. Then I sat in Hazel's doorway and watched her sleep, her breath lifting the blanket in steady tides. The fox was tucked under her chin. When she stirred, I whispered, "You don't have to be small." She didn't wake, but the corner of her mouth twitched like she'd heard from far away. Morning came with ordinary chores: lunchbox, lost sock, a permission slip that had quietly become due weeks ago. On the walk to school, Hazel told me about a cardboard castle project. It needs a drawbridge, she said gravely, so the queen can decide who comes in. I swallowed a laugh that wanted to be a sob. That sounds just right, I said. Give the queen a good lock. Back home, a text pinged from an unsaved number, not my parents and not Belle's. The language was polite in a way that made my skin crawl. Hi, Josephine. Quick heads up. Some folks are circulating a cut of a doc about EOS. Might be nothing. Have you seen it? Attached was a private link to a hosting platform with a neutral title, For Consideration. The sender identified themselves as an assistant at a fund we'd pitched months ago. I stared at the screen, heart climbing a cold ladder. I didn't press play, not yet. I forwarded the message to my lawyer with 3 words. Is this them? Spencer found me at the table, the phone centered on the wood like a threat. He didn't look at the screen first. He looked at my face. Okay, he said. What do we do? We hold our ground, I said. We keep records. We don't feed it. He nodded once, a soldier accepting orders he'd already decided to follow. For the first time all week, I understood the shape of our marriage in a crisis. Not a lecture, not a rescue. A shield you can share without asking who gets it first. Before noon, my lawyer replied. She wanted copies of the hotel documents and asked for permission to contact the platform before anything went public. I gave it. Then I made myself walk to the sink and wash the breakfast mugs, because plates still had to be cleaned even when your life tilted. The rattle of ceramic against ceramic sounded like bones. Water ran over my hands, too hot and then too cold. Somewhere down the block, a neighbor's dog barked. The ordinary refused to stop for my catastrophe. In its stubbornness, there was a kind of mercy. Another email arrived. No subject line, no greeting. Just a single sentence. You really don't want your board to see this. My skin went electric and then numb. I clicked the sender details. A new throwaway address, masked and forgettable. The body included a private streamer link labeled Preview 02. I stared at it until the timer icon pulsed in my peripheral vision like a heartbeat. I didn't open it. I took a photo of the screen and saved it to the same folder as the logs, named this file with the same furious, tidy hand. Threats. Then I wrote, slowly, so I couldn't take it back. I won't be paying for peace anymore. When I looked up, the light had shifted across the floor, angling toward afternoon. A bird thumped the window and flew off, mistaking glass for sky, sky for glass. I thought of Hazel's drawbridge, of queens, and locks, and choosing who gets in. I turned my phone face down and walked to the door, just to feel the weight of it in my hand as I slid the deadbolt into place, the small metal sound of a choice made and kept. The buzzer on the oven went off. I laughed a little, too loudly, at the timing. Then I picked up the printed logs again, ran a fingertip down the timestamps, and let my fury rearrange into something steadier. Not fire, foundation. A structure I could build a future on without asking the past for permission. The phone buzzed once on the table behind me, a new notification lighting the screen for half a second. It was from Belle this time. Subject line, for your consideration. I didn't need to open it to know what sat inside. I took a breath that shook only once. The thing had finally shown its face. I put the documents in an envelope, wrote my lawyer's name on the front, and placed it by the door. Then I went to stand at the window, watching the street in a brilliant slap of afternoon sun, and felt the silence around me settle. Not empty, not ash. Readiness. The next move would not be theirs alone. The first time I opened the link, I told myself it was just curiosity, just damage control. Then the video loaded, and the first frame stole the air from my lungs. Soft piano music, white serif text fading in. The secret life of the CEO. My company's name, EOS Bioinformatics, appeared beneath it in a quiet, accusing font. The opening sequence looked professional, too professional. Crisp transitions, studio-grade color correction, a voiceover that sounded detached and deliberate. Then my own face flashed on screen, an interview clip from a science conference. I'd been explaining our ethics program, how transparency builds trust between innovation and humanity. Belle's voice came in over the clip, low and almost tender. Behind every so-called ethical company lies a truth they don't want you to see. Cut to footage of me at a charity gala. The camera zoomed on a champagne glass in my hand. Freeze frame. Then Mom's voice, soft, rehearsed. Josephine has always cared about appearances. I didn't realize I was standing until Spencer's hand found my shoulder. What is this? He asked quietly. I couldn't answer. The film went on, out of context emails, my quotes stripped of context, conference photos pasted between slow pans of financial graphs. Belle's narration wove a story that didn't exist, a story of greed dressed as virtue. And then came the knife. A blurred clip of Hazel, maybe 4 years old, crying on a beach. A voiceover said, "Even her daughter has learned that compassion ends where profit begins." My knees almost gave. That video, our video, had come from a private family folder. Belle had taken it, edited it, and turned my child into an exhibit. I slammed the laptop shut. The coffee mug rattled on the table. The kitchen walls felt too close. Spencer's voice was steady but sharp. "You call her now. Right now." I did. She answered on the first ring. "Impressive editing," I said. Her voice was calm, bright, detached. "People should know what kind of person you really are." "You mean the person who stopped paying your bills?" "You call it boundaries," she said. "I call it cruelty. Investors will call it fraud once they see the full picture." "You're threatening me." Belle laughed. "Oh, Josephine, it's just storytelling. Unless you'd rather it never goes public. That's still an option. You just have to make things right." The words landed like ice. Make things right. It wasn't revenge. It was blackmail. I hung up before I could say something that would end with police tape. By noon, I was in my lawyer's office downtown. Her name was Ruth Calder, a woman with calm eyes and a voice like sharpened glass. She watched the first 2 minutes of the film without blinking. "She's naming your company directly?" "Yes." "Then this isn't just defamation," Ruth said. "This is commercial sabotage. And using your daughter's image without consent? That's a second lawsuit waiting to happen." I nodded, shaking slightly. "Can we stop her?" "If she publishes, we file immediately," Ruth said. "If she threatens to, that's blackmail. Either way, you have leverage." Her tone was almost gentle. "The courts will be on your side." It should have made me feel safe. Instead, it made me feel coldly awake. Ruth leaned forward. "Send me everything. Emails, voicemails, the hotel documents you mentioned. Anything that shows pattern or motive." I slid the printed hotel logs across the desk along with my notes, each line inked with restless precision. She scanned the timestamps, eyebrows tightening. "She left your daughter outside for nearly 3 hours. Good. We'll lead with this." "Good?" I echoed, my voice brittle. "Good for us," Ruth clarified, "not for her." The word us steadied something in me. For the first time in days, I didn't feel alone inside the chaos. That evening, I sat in Hazel's doorway again. Her room smelled of lavender and glue sticks. The cardboard castle she'd been building stood half-finished on the rug, walls painted pink and gold. I whispered, "You don't have to be small anymore." She stirred but didn't wake. The fox was still tucked under her chin. I went downstairs, opened my laptop, and started documenting everything. Dates, times, threats, every call since the hallway. A timeline of cruelty, masquerading as love. When I reached the line about the film, I typed, "This isn't just a smear, it's inheritance. The family way of rewriting reality until you believe it." Halfway through, a notification popped up. Private message, board member, Lucas Tran. "Hey, Josephine. Saw a weird video floating around. Probably nothing. You okay?" "Probably nothing." The phrase twisted in my stomach. Another ping. Media inquiry. The Ethical Ledger. We're preparing a piece on CEO transparency. Would you like to comment before publication? It was spreading. I forwarded both to Ruth. She called 5 minutes later. "It's early stage distribution," she said. "Someone's teasing the story to bait engagement. We can still contain it, but we'll need to confront her directly." "When?" "Tomorrow," she said. "I've already reached out." She agreed to meet, with her parents present. "Of course she did," I muttered. Ruth paused. "You'll let me handle the talking." I hesitated. "I want to be in the room." Her voice softened. "Then you'll be there. Just don't react to her bait." "React?" I said. "Ruth, she put my daughter in her film." There was silence on the line, then a sigh. "Then let's make sure she regrets it." That night, I dreamed I was back in the hotel hallway. Only this time, I was the one sitting outside the door, the carpet rough under my palms, the world humming faintly on the other side. When I woke, the sound of Hazel's breathing down the hall anchored me back to the present. Morning light crept through the curtains. The house was quiet, except for the click of the coffee maker and the low thud of Spencer's footsteps. He stopped behind me, resting a hand on my shoulder. "Today's the meeting?" "Yeah. You ready?" "Not really," I said, "but I'm done being quiet." He kissed the top of my head. "That's ready enough." The conference room Ruth booked was glass-walled and echoing, perched above the city like judgment itself. When they walked in, Belle, Mom, and Dad, the temperature dropped. Belle wore white again, as if purity could be pressed into fabric. Mom clutched a designer purse like a shield. Dad tried for calm authority, but his tie was crooked. Ruth greeted them with practiced politeness, then set a folder on the table. "This film contains false statements and defamatory material. If you release or distribute it, we'll pursue legal and criminal action, including the use of a minor's likeness for blackmail." The word blackmail landed like thunder. Belle's smirk faltered. "It's a documentary." Ruth's tone didn't change. "No, it's a ransom note with editing." Mom gasped softly, as if the word itself were obscene. Dad opened his mouth, but Ruth kept going. "You've violated privacy laws, defamation statutes, and commercial interference codes. If this video appears anywhere, we'll remove it within hours and pursue damages." Belle looked at me. "You think you're untouchable." "No," I said. "I just finally learned how to fight back." Her hands curled on the table. "You built your empire on lies." "Funny," I said. "That's exactly what you're doing now." Ruth slid another page forward. The hotel logs, the time-stamped proof of Hazel's 3 hours outside. "This," she said evenly, "is what you call peace and quiet." Belle's face drained of color. "You've changed," she whispered. "Thank God," I said. For a long moment, the room was utterly still. Then Belle exhaled hard, slamming her pen onto the table. "Fine. You win." She turned to my parents. "Let's go." They hesitated. Mom looked at me like I was a stranger. "You've become cruel," she said again, her voice trembling. I met her eyes. "No, I've become done." They left. The door's soft click sounded like a verdict. Ruth gathered the papers. "They'll comply," she said, "but expect fallout. I'm counting on it." Outside, the city glittered under pale sunlight. My reflection in the glass looked older, steadier, maybe even dangerous. I turned to Ruth. "They thought they could use my child to break me. And they taught me exactly how far I'll go to protect her." I walked out of that room lighter than I'd felt in years. That night, Hazel wanted to show me her finished castle. She'd added the drawbridge, painted tiny guards on the walls, and written a sign over the gate in shaky block letters, "Family only." For a second, the words made my chest ache. Then she lifted the cardboard lid and showed me what was inside, rows of paper people holding hands. "Everyone's welcome," she said proudly, "as long as they're kind." I smiled. "That's the best rule I've ever heard." When she fell asleep, I sat by the castle under the nightlight's glow and whispered the truth. I wish someone had told my parents years ago. Kindness isn't quiet. It's a door you have to keep open, even when the ones who taught you love tried to lock it. I thought the meeting would end it. It didn't. It just changed the shape of the war. 2 days later, Ruth called. "They've agreed in writing not to publish," she said. "But there's something else." I could hear the hesitation in her voice. "What?" They didn't come alone. Someone recorded the hallway exchange after the meeting. A smartwatch. We caught a glimpse of a red light in the security footage. We can't prove what they did with it yet, but... I laughed, short and bitter. "Of course she recorded it. Why wouldn't she?" "She's looking for leverage," Ruth said. "She wants you to react." I looked out the window at the city lights stretching like constellations I couldn't name. Then she'll have to starve. The next week was quiet in the way that makes your skin crawl. No calls, no texts. Even my parents stayed silent. But silence from them never meant peace. It meant plotting. I found out how right I was when Ruth forwarded me a transcript from the Ethical Ledger. An anonymous source close to the Quinn family had provided insight into the interpersonal conflicts behind EOS's public image. No video this time, just words. Words twisted to sound like regret, sorrow, warning. I could recognize Mom's phrasing in every sentence. She loves to appear strong. She thinks boundaries are the same as cruelty. We just want our granddaughter to grow up knowing family is forgiveness. Forgiveness. The word lodged in my throat like glass. Spencer read it over my shoulder. "You don't think Belle wrote that?" "No," I said. "Belle doesn't do subtle." He nodded slowly. "Your mom?" "She always said truth was just what you could get others to agree with." Ruth moved fast. She filed the cease and desist for the publication, citing ongoing blackmail investigation. But when she asked if I wanted to pursue criminal charges against my mother for defamation, I hesitated. She's still Hazel's grandmother, I said quietly. Ruth's expression didn't change. And what does that mean to you after the hallway? It was a fair question. I didn't have a fair answer. Not forgiveness, I said finally. Just boundaries that stay locked. A week later, I found the courage, or maybe the foolishness, to go see them. Not Belle, not Dad, just Mom. She answered the door, already braced for battle, chin high, perfume sharp enough to be armor. Josephine, she said, wary, but she still stepped aside. The living room looked smaller than I remembered, or maybe I'd just grown too big for it. The air smelled of old candles and lemon polish. On the mantel, pictures of Belle's kids still took center stage. My own daughter's photo sat half hidden behind a vase. I didn't bother sitting. I'm not here to fight, I said. But I need to understand why. She frowned. Why what? Why you helped her? Her shoulders stiffened. I didn't help anyone. I just told her the truth. The truth? I repeated. That I abandoned the family? That I buy virtue with money? That's your truth now? Her voice shook. You've changed, Josephine. You treat us like strangers. Because you became strangers the moment you left my daughter outside that door. Her hand trembled around a glass coaster. That wasn't me. No, I said softly, but you stood by it. For a long moment, the only sound was the faint tick of the mantel clock. Then she set the coaster down and looked at me with something that wasn't anger, something older, more fragile. When I was 6, she said, my mother locked me outside for crying too loud. I sat on the porch all night. She said it was how you teach a child strength. The words hit like a ghost's hand on my shoulder. So you thought it was normal, I said. I thought it was love, she whispered. That's what I knew. I stared at her, the woman who'd given me life, who'd taught me silence, who'd never once asked if it hurt. Now she looked small, human, terrified of being wrong. I'm not doing this to punish you, I said. I'm doing it so Hazel doesn't inherit it. Her eyes welled up. And what about forgiveness? I shook my head. Forgiveness isn't a free pass. It's a fence. You can stay on the other side. I left before she could answer. That night, Ruth called again. We have the smartwatch, she said. My pulse jumped. How? Belle left it at a repair shop. The tech recognized her name from the notice we filed. They contacted us. What's on it? We're still decrypting, Ruth said, but early scan shows multiple audio files from the day of the meeting. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. She recorded everything. Yes, and here's the part you should know. There's a segment that isn't about you. It's between Belle and your father. They didn't realize it was still running. I met Ruth in her office the next morning. She played the clip. The sound quality was tinny but clear. Dad's voice first. You think she'll fold? Belle. If she doesn't, we'll release the second cut. I'll tell the board she's covering financial fraud. Dad sighed. Fine, but make sure we get the settlement before she sues. The house can't go another month. Belle laughed quietly. So I ruin her life, and you call it even? Think of it as balance, he said. I felt the blood drain from my body. Ruth paused the playback. This is collusion. Financial motive, coordinated threat, confirmed blackmail. She looked at me. Do you want to press full charges? I closed my eyes. Hazel's face flickered behind my lids. Laughing, safe, untouched by all this rot. Yes, I said finally. Every charge. The court filings went out that afternoon. The audio was sealed as evidence, but the headlines weren't. Family feud turns legal. CEO files suit against relatives over smear campaign. I didn't read the comments. Spencer did once, then told me not to bother. People will always pick a villain, he said. Let them be wrong. Hazel kept asking why Grandma wasn't calling anymore. I told her we were giving everyone space. She nodded in the simple, unbreakable way children do when they trust their parents completely. For the first time, I understood what that meant. A month later, Ruth called with news. The court granted an injunction. They can't contact you or Hazel directly. If they try, it's contempt. I sat in silence, trying to feel something. Relief, victory, closure. Instead, all I felt was the echo of the hallway again, the years of quiet that had built to this. Ruth's voice softened. You did the right thing. I know, I said. It just doesn't feel like winning. Justice rarely does. That evening, I took Hazel to the beach, the same one from that stolen video, but on our terms this time. The air was cool, the water silver under dusk. She built a tiny sandcastle and drew a heart in front of it with her finger. "Who's the heart for?" I asked. She grinned. "For us? For family?" I smiled, though it caught in my throat. "That's a good answer." As the tide crept closer, Hazel squealed and ran up the sand. I stayed, letting the water reach my ankles, cold and bracing. Family, I thought, was never meant to mean loyalty at any cost. Sometimes it means you build a new one that never locks the door. 1 year later, the world looked deceptively calm. The lawsuits had ended, the injunctions were permanent, and EOS bioinformatics was thriving in ways that still startled me. Awards, interviews, new labs, the same media that once circled like vultures now praised my resilience, my unshakable ethics. I didn't correct them. You can't explain survival to spectators. Hazel was 7 now. Her laugh carried down hallways like music made of light. She'd started piano lessons, and every note she hit was loud and imperfect and free. Sometimes I'd watch her play, hands too small for the keys, and think about the girl who once whispered, "I wasn't too loud today, was I?" Now she didn't ask permission to take up space. She owned it. That was the real victory. Ruth called one morning to say the digital forensics were finally complete. The smartwatch, the files, the hidden transfers, all cataloged and closed. "It's over, Josephine," she said. But endings are just quieter beginnings. After she hung up, I sat in my office staring at the sunlight fracturing through the blinds. My reflection in the window didn't look like a victor. It looked like someone who had outlived the storm and didn't yet know what to do with the quiet. Spencer walked in, tie loose, coffee in hand. "Board meeting in 10? 5, I corrected, smiling. He leaned on the doorframe. "You okay?" "I keep expecting noise," I admitted. "But silence feels heavier than I thought." He nodded. "That's because you spent your whole life earning peace you never got to keep. It'll take time to trust it." That afternoon, a letter arrived in the mail. No return address, just my name written in my mother's neat handwriting. I almost threw it away, but curiosity, or forgiveness, or both, won. Inside was a single photograph. A little girl, maybe 6, sitting on a wooden porch, her knees pulled to her chest. The corner of the photo was torn, and on the back, in fading ink, my mother had written, "I know where I learned it. I'm learning to stop." No apology, just acknowledgement. It wasn't enough to fix anything, but it was enough to make me pause. I slipped the photo into the drawer of my desk, not to forget, but to remember without bleeding. Belle, I heard, had moved to another city. Word traveled through cousins who still couldn't resist gossip. She'd taken an office job, something steady, predictable. Her marriage hadn't survived the scandal. He'd left after calling her a woman who edits the truth until she believes it. My parents sold the house soon after the court orders came through. The money they'd once funneled into Belle's projects evaporated, as if it had never existed. They downsized to a small apartment near the outskirts, far enough that running into them was statistically impossible. Every now and then, distant relatives sent messages disguised as olive branches. "You only get one family," they'd say, and I'd reply, "Exactly?" The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was clean. Hazel no longer asked about Grandma or Aunt Belle. Her world had grown brighter, unburdened. She spent weekends painting cardboard kingdoms and naming every castle after virtues she invented. The Fortress of Kind Words, the Tower of Laughing Queens. One Saturday she asked, "Mom, can families break?" I hesitated, then sat beside her. "Sometimes," I said, "but sometimes they bend so they don't have to." She frowned thoughtfully. "Ours doesn't bend, it builds." I hugged her, eyes stinging. "Exactly, sweetheart, it builds." That night, after she went to bed, I walked through the house. The same one that once echoed with dread after every phone call. Now it hummed with a different kind of quiet. On my desk, a new envelope waited, the final settlement confirmation. The funds Belle had siphoned under my parents' names had been reclaimed through the courts. I read the last line twice. Case closed. All accounts terminated. Underneath it, the photograph of the porch girl peeked from the drawer. I touched the edge, not with anger this time, but with a strange, detached mercy. Some legacies don't need to be carried. They just need to be recognized so you can set them down. Spring came early that year. Hazel's school hosted an open event, an art showcase for parents. I was helping her hang her drawings when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Josephine." I turned. Belle stood near the door, thinner, quieter. Her hair had lost its practiced shine, her posture the same. But her eyes were different. I didn't move closer. She glanced at Hazel across the room, then back at me. She's beautiful, she said softly. Looks happy. She is, I said. Belle nodded. That's good. Her hands twisted in front of her. I just wanted to say I never meant... I cut her off gently. You did mean it. That's why it worked. She swallowed hard. I'm sorry. I believed her. Maybe not in the way she wanted, but enough to know the war was over. I hope you find peace, I said. She looked like she might cry, but she didn't. She just nodded once, turned, and left before Hazel could see her. That night, I told Spencer what happened. He didn't ask if I'd forgiven her. He just said, You look lighter. Maybe because I finally believe she can't reach us anymore. He smiled. She never could, not really. Outside, the rain started, soft and cleansing. I stood by the window and watched it run down the glass in thin silver lines. For years, I had mistaken distance for safety, silence for peace. But real peace wasn't the absence of noise. It was the presence of truth. Hazel's laughter echoed faintly from her room, and I let it fill the spaces my family once occupied. They had called it truth. They had called it art. But it had always been cruelty, dressed up as honesty. Now finally, the narrative was mine again. And I chose to end it with quiet. Not revenge, not noise, just clean silence. The next morning, Hazel ran into the kitchen, hair wild, clutching a piece of paper. Look, Mommy, it's our castle now. I drew you on the bridge. I looked. 2 figures, hand in hand, standing before an open gate. Above them, she'd written in messy crayon letters, Family, the ones who let you in. I smiled so wide it hurt. Perfect, I said. Absolutely perfect. Outside, the world kept moving, unapologetic, unstoppable, alive. And for the first time in years, I didn't brace for it. I opened the window, let the morning light flood in, and breathed without flinching. Because silence, when you've earned it, isn't empty. It's holy. It's home.